That's a Sheffield welcome for you, isn't it? God's own city. Whoa!
Hello everyone, welcome back. So, as you can see, we're all here, and I'm really thrilled to be leading the Q&A about the film. I thought it was a fantastic film. I love how intimate it is. I love how much insight it gives you into things about... That's totally fine.
So I was just trying to get... There's more people over there than over there. So I just wanted to make sure they didn't feel... OK, there we go.
We can all swap chairs periodically.
Yeah, we'll
just give you equal coverage.
Wander around, yeah.
I'd like to start the Q&A. I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it out to the floor.
The floor?
In the floor, I'll be asking questions.
The floor, yeah. That's in the sense.
So if you do have a question in a second, please put your hand up. And one of the three people wearing white T-shirts will find you, take you from the room, and eject you from the thing. So the first question I'd like to ask you about it, Michael, is that I really loved that the film captured to me what is so great about Monty Python, the spirit of silliness and kind of defiant, anarchic silliness, like sticking two fingers up at power and at pomposity and stuff. And then I was thinking about the fact that there's such a funny thing now that I am such a lifelong fan, and I love you all and respect you all so much. And since Python, you've done so much work that's so well respected. How do you cope with the fact that people take you so seriously now and have so much kind of respect and deference towards you now, when what you did with Python is so silly and so wild?
Well, I mean, I don't cope with it at all well, really. You want to be taken seriously for certain things that you do, but I think the spirit of Python is something which is kind of there with us all, and that's, I think, what came out in the film tonight. It's still there. We're all in our 70s. It's 30 years since we last did Python on stage, but somehow that spirit hadn't changed. No one was saying, oh, we can't say this, we mustn't do that, it will offend somebody. It was a delight, you know, in just being together, doing the same things, and keeping the spirit of Python going. So, I mean, that's the only way you can do it. I mean, I do lots of other things, but Python is Python, and remains one of the first things I did in my working life.
And do you still, because you don't do as much comedy anymore, do you still find yourself getting comedic ideas or having the odd idea for a sketch? And what do you do with that part of your creativity now?
I sell it to John Cleese when he needs it for his alimony show. Of course I do. My sense of humour is unimpaired, really, over the years. It's just, Python was wonderful because it gave us a platform, if you like, to do exactly what we wanted to do, which was very, very rare in television, but at that time it was fine because the BBC let us off the hook. Because BBC was a big organisation in '69, it ran television, they didn't have to worry about a few idiots doing a show, you know, they didn't understand. You just do it late at night and, you know, and take it off when Horse of the Year show overruns and all that. That'll take care of them, that'll sort them out. So it was really good that we were able to have that sort of freedom at that time. And that's where it all sprang from, really. And you can see from what you've seen tonight and a lot of the material that was written a long, long time ago and seems to have generally stood the test of time.
Did you have any sketches you were really excited about performing again? Or do you have any that you really wish you could have performed in the show? Any favourites that you didn't get to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have... No, actually, it was a pretty good choice of sketches. I mean, I think the right ones were chosen just because they were popular. I mean, I would like to have done the whole of Cheese Shop.
Yeah.
But in fact, what we decided was to do Dead Parrot and then segue it into Cheese Shop.
Yeah.
Sorry, and then the parrots got some cheese. Oh yeah. Well, so this went on night after night. John, you know, sort of loved it because it would, you know, add an extra half hour to the show each night. What we did the cheeses. So I would quite like to have done the two of them separately. But I think it was a pretty good choice.
And I love the fact that you could put the odd line from a really famous sketch in, and that was all that was needed for sort of the laughs of recognition and excitement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and must let others talk, but what I felt about the whole extravaganza was that we sort of got away with it. And I never thought I thought there was a danger of us not getting away with it and falling flat on our faces and people saying, well, they're too old and they're no longer funny. You know, in front of 15,000 people, which could easily have happened.
But
and it didn't, and so I'm just relieved.
That's amazing that after something that's successful that your feelings on it are like, oh, thank God, that's sorted.
Yeah, well, I suppose so, but, you know, it's like sort of doing a school play 70 years later. Is it the right thing to do?
And I wanted to ask you about the film itself, because how did it come about that you made a documentary surrounding these shows?
Well, it was a couple of stages, and I suppose it started with Holly making a call to Paul.
Paul, yeah. When the guys decided to reunite and come together to do the show, the first thing was a read-through, which you see some of in the documentary. And it literally was a case of calling my friend with a camera and saying, just get down here, we need to start documenting it. And at that stage, we didn't know it would be a documentary. I just knew that there should be footage of what was happening. So Paul Shamazian came with his 5D, and he shot from November 2013, which is the read-through and the press conference, rehearsals, all the way through to 1 week before the live shows began. And at that stage, James and Roger came on board. And it was only at that point that we started to think about what the story was that we were trying to tell. Okay, we will be making a documentary. How are we going to manage all this footage that's been shot for the last however many months and turn it into a story? And that's where James and Roger stepped in.
As I understand it, you guys didn't want a documentary to be
No,
made.
absolutely not. Difficult enough doing the bloody show without being filmed, you know, sort of farting backstage or whatever we were doing, having our sort of makeup put on, but, you know.
So I got a call from Roger a week before my wedding, and it was a Sunday morning, and Roger Grafe is, I don't know whether anyone here knows him, but he's a very eminent documentary maker. And
who we worked with on the Amnesty shows all those years ago. He worked with Python 78 or 76, yeah.
He'd made the original films of the live shows of Amnesty, and so I think that when they were bullying you into making the documentary, somebody said, well, we'll do it if Roger does it.
It was actually Terry Jones's recommendation.
Oh, so Terry Jones said, we'll do it if Roger does it. And then
I said I wouldn't do it if Roger does it.
and then Roger rang me and said, you know, will you direct this thing? And I thought he was ringing to ask me about seating plans for my wedding. But he was like, you need to go to a meeting.
Something far more trivial.
you need to do this thing. And I took a couple of minutes to think about it and said, yeah, okay. But we ended up, the reason Roger normally executive produces things that I direct, but I was going on my honeymoon, so he directed the second week and I directed the first week, and that gave me the wonderful privilege of getting to direct with Roger Grafe. So to actually then putting it together, I mean, I think when I turned up with Paul, and I had to literally be the most annoying person in the world. I had to follow Mike into his dressing room.
Yeah, you didn't have to, but you did. And this is the whole thing, you know, they're cheeky chappies, the documentary. There's something, you know, you're there, you know, doing something highly intimate in your dressing room, like a crossword puzzle, something like that. And suddenly they're there, sort of, fitting in. But it's, you know, in the end, especially seeing the result, I'm really glad that you did do it and so much was captured. But I wanted to ask, sorry.
Oh, no,
May
please.
I ask? No, 'cause I wanted to,
I can ask, if you ask me, I'll ask him.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to ask him how difficult it was to work with us.
That's a good question.
How hard was it to work?
Difficult.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Difficult.
How difficult was it to work?
Shall I do that Python by Python?
Well, yes. They want to know that, don't they? Yes, you do. Yeah.
It was very nerve-wracking. I mean, Paul had done a lot of filming, and he felt that he had the rules down, which was generally stand about kind of 15 feet away in the corner and film. And so my task was, and we discussed this in a meeting, was literally to take the camera and take it right up to you guys and make you engage.
So you broke the 15 foot?
I broke the 15
straight
foot.
away, yeah.
So
okay.
he was really worried that I was going to get thrown out because I did things like film you eat dinner.
Yeah.
But you know, it was a great pleasure filming with you, Michael.
No, I know.
It was very nice. I mean, everyone has their different personalities, and Mike is exactly how he appears now, very warm and very and polite to a fault. So it was easier for me to force my way into his dressing room than others, because it took you a bit longer to throw me out. Eric was like, definitely don't come into my dressing room. Terry G was because Holly is Terry G's daughter. She was able to kind of throw me in and say, "Daddy, they're coming in," and so
he loved it.
He loved it.
He loved it. He said on the film, he loved it. I don't want to do this. Oh, it's going to be awful. It's going to be ghastly. I hate this whole thing. And then suddenly he's missed a show beat. I think he misses it more than anybody else. Yeah. He only had 3 lines.
And John is pretty intimidating, especially for a small guy like me. And Paul was very small, and Roger's very small. And there was a shot in the original cut where we were waiting to do an interview with John, and he sort of walked down towards us, but the camera had been set up just for a wide shot, and it just tilted up to see this guy tower over. And it was like, right, I'm ready. What are you going to ask me? So, but actually, as a group of people together, you're all very nice.
I mean, I think that's what's in the film, what you captured, is that everybody's different. And that's what makes Python work, you know. We're not all the same, doing exactly the same thing. Everybody can bring something in from a different angle. And how people, I just think it's little things about how people relax, what they talk about when they're not talking about anything particular. That's really key to this film, you know, just, I don't know, us waffling on. It kind of tells you more than if we're all making a statement about comedy or anything like that.
And the fact that the camera has been able to sort of go so close to you guys and catch you just chatting and swearing, which I know sounds ridiculous, but to see you so relaxed is fascinating, and it feels so privileged, the access, I think.
But also, James and Roger set up GoPros in the dressing rooms that were on the back of the stage. So that's where you see Terry G getting into costume, and that was GoPro. That was their idea of setting it up. So you had that real intimate feel. I don't know if you realised you had a GoPro in your dressing.
I didn't know it was a GoPro. I thought it was a bottle opener. God, I was thinking it all the time. No wonder.
And then the other thing that we did was gave everyone a handheld little camcorder. The idea being that they would pick it up and film themselves in moments that we weren't there to capture. I think you all went on the first day. I saw you all drifting off with the gift box, taking it home for gifts for your kids.
Give to the grandchildren.
So you all went, oh, what a lovely present.
Technically, it was a huge challenge because we had 10 days of stuff happening, and we knew that we had to get the body of the film in those 10 days, and then we could fill in with some of the previously shot footage and the archive and all of that. And so we were very, very focused on what we needed, and we used slow-motion cameras and a kind of a series of different techniques just to make sure that we had enough to do. And when the editors, who are both here, Dave Atkinson and Simon Barker, who I'd wave. They did an absolutely extraordinary job, and you know, kind of watching it back is sort of there were lots of lovely things that were left on the cutting room floor, but actually making sense of it all was really challenging.
But the main thing, I just want to say this one quick thing, and then I'll shut up. But just you had to be quite audacious. You had to be up front. You had to be, you know, unapologetically intrusive.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not easy to do with any group of people at all. And I think that's just what these sort of things are. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get anything.
But there were quite a few kind of not, had to fight past the stage managers and the tour managers and stuff to even get close to you guys on stage. We had to get past all of those guys who are running around backstage trying to make the show happen. So it's a live show, and we're trying to be there with cameras for a documentary that they didn't, want anything to do with. So it's quite an interesting dynamic everywhere.
You have to abandon Britishness as a kind of operating process. You sort of think, oh, I shouldn't do that. You're like, nah, you should just go and do it. I'm actually filming with the president of Lithuania next week, and I've told her people that I film with the Pythons, so, trying to say that, really difficult people to film with.
She's notorious. Is she the president's a lady?
Yes.
She's notoriously difficult.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's really...
Oh, yes. The ground is littered with
she's known
Lithuanian...
breakfast. But, it survived John Cleese.
So I suppose at this point, it'd be nice to open up to audience questions. I can see down the front, so you had your hand straight up. So if you hang on, somebody will come to you with a microphone.
Great film, and super to see it in this lovely theatre. Eric Idle, I'm sure he wasn't being blackmailed to say it, but he said you were the best improviser at the O2. And not only did, from what I saw of the show, not only did you know your own lines, you knew everybody else's. Is that always your approach to a script, and has that come easier or harder with age, that you learn the script?
Oh, yeah. I think you've got to get the script down as early as possible. And then you can play with it, and then you can play with other people's reactions and all that. If you've only just learned it the night before, you're just so obsessed by getting your own lines right, you don't get the whole feel of it. So I began rehearsing it months before, and I know these sketches. I've written half of them, and yet I'm still wandering around saying, 4, no, 3, and all this sort of thing. And I just was, it was vital as far as I was concerned to get it right. I think for all of us, too. I mean, everybody knows that you are, you've got to be as comfortable with the lines as possible. You know that the audience is going to know them better than you anyway. So if you go slightly wrong, but yeah, that was my approach, was to be sort of word perfect on the first read through.
That's very conscientious.
Well, no, it's not really being conscientious, just my own way of doing it. Otherwise, I feel that it's going to be harder work when you're all there with everybody and you're having to sort of just worry about the physical line itself. Whereas if you know the lines, then you can improvise, you can play with them, you can change them and all that without feeling, oh God, I'm going to be lost because the lines have changed. You want to be able to... it's actually being very precise so that you can allow change to happen.
Did you find by the end of the run that quite a lot had added into it, that it had changed quite a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of things went wrong, and the audience loved it when John forgot his lines and all that, and Eric's moustache fell off. And by the end, Eric was actually making his moustache fall off. I'm sorry to have to tell you this. But I can remember I was so, the last night was this very, very big... it was going out to cinemas worldwide, 1,600 cinemas, something like that. And I just thought, this is wonderful. I'm really enjoying this. It's been fantastic. I was coasting along, and I completely forgot a line in the thing with Terry Jones when we're talking about the Protestants and the Catholics. And I have to say something about the Protestants, Reformation, something like that. And I just thought, what is this line? I'm into this thing, and I don't know what the line is. And I got through it. It was all right. But I thought, oh, my God, on this night of all nights. But in the end, I'll tell you a secret here, the editors, I think, used the night before and put it on there, where I got it right. But there you are, you see, when you get a little bit too comfortable with it, it's not always a good thing.
So there's somebody at the back there with a hand raised.
Hi, this is a question for Michael. So you were saying in the film, or maybe just now, that it's been 30 years since you've done it before, since you last did it. A lot has changed in 30 years, and there's a big new audience, a younger audience such as me, or many people like me. How, for you guys who haven't done it in such a long time, how did the change in technology and the change in especially television and comedy affect the way that you did this show?
Well, I think the change in technology was very, very important, because the idea of a Python reunion had come along in 1998, I think. That was the last time, in Las Vegas and all that. I was personally very aware of the fact that if we did a reunion, it's got to be as good as anything we'd done before. It can't be second rate, just because we're older and all that. And also, I was very worried that Graham Chapman would not be, couldn't be part of it. But the technology moved on, and by the time we got to the O2, it was just, you were able to integrate Graham into the show. The visual stuff, the screens above and all that was so sophisticated that one was able to bring Graham really into the show. I think that was one of the best things about the show in the end. And also, in terms of playing to a big audience, the sound equipment was much better. I mean, it was a bit of a gamble. I didn't know quite who our audience was going to be and what age they'd be. I assumed they'd all be 70-year-olds like us. And in fact, there were people of 65, and one or two had obviously come in for the wrong night, of 55. But we didn't know really, we didn't think, how can we get this new young audience, other than the fact that we used sort of media, social media a lot, didn't you, Holly?
Yeah, exactly.
Publicising it and all. That's actually a good, isn't it? I mean, that social media side, we weren't very good at that, obviously coming from the 1960s.
And so around the show, we built Python into social media, which it hadn't really existed before. So the show launched a Facebook page and a Twitter page and a very, very active YouTube channel and website. So from that was our way of trying to engage with younger audiences, or all audiences, but it helped us to engage with younger audiences, because that is a way of now, communicating with them, whereas the traditional way of something in the newspaper or radio ad isn't really the way forward. So it was, very much creating this social world for Python, which continues to this day.
But people were bringing, their kids of 8 years old.
Yeah.
And my cousin brought his children, and they just loved it. They thought it was absolutely wonderful, penis song, vagina song, all that. It was, dare I say it, above their heads, but you know what I mean. It was they didn't worry about that. And actually, I saw my cousin's little boy at the weekend at a wedding. He's only 10 years old. He knows all the words of the Lumberjack song. He said, "Shall I sing it to you?" I said, "Well, yes, do." "Oh, I've done women's clothing." This is just wonderful.
And then we also, it doesn't come across the documentary, but every night, for each show, we had a different celebrity blackmail guest. And that celebrity was generally another comedian. So that was another way that we were engaging new audiences. So we had Noel Fielding, we had Bill Bailey, we had Stephen Fry, and then that brought in their audiences as well. So it's another way of reaching out to like a bigger, wider spectrum of people.
It was great when Noel Fielding came on. I mean, he was just completely blown away by the experience of going on. But he could barely speak. He was so taken by going on stage.
I know, all these people
it was brilliant.
Who are normally incredibly vocal and sharp and quick, they were reduced to gibbering wreck. Mind you, they did have to come on in the middle of the show with a paper bag over their head. I mean, that was kind of... And also run the risk of people not knowing who they were when the paper bag came off. Look! Who's that? Is that the Minister of Transport? No. Mike McGeer.
I was thinking of that because it's such an institution to people, and it's interesting to hear you talking about kind of engaging new fans to the show by social media, because to me it's a thing that it's been a lifelong thing that my parents got me into, and I feel like there must be loads of people sort of who are younger than the show, or the same age as the show, and know it because it's such a kind of well-loved thing and passed on through generations and things like that. Which I appreciate is not really a question. I also think my necklace is... Sorry.
Necklace playing up a bit.
I'm so sorry.
Playing up a bit, that's it.
Let's ask another question. Sorry, there's a man there.
Oh dear. He's not even got the microphone, I can hear him.
Just saying I'm starstruck as well now. Despite your achievements, I've always thought of you as being quite a modest sort of fellow. Do you think it actually altered your approach to life when you became an asteroid? You're a heavenly body now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've never been quite sure what to think about my asteroid. I think perhaps I ought to have it out, you know. Or don't sit down. No, that's hemorrhoid. That's different. That doesn't whiz through space at all. But it's rather odd when things like that happen. But I mean, far more extraordinary to me was and I still can't get to grips with it, that spam, you know, the word spam for useless junk on the media, it comes from the Python spam sketch. All the guys who started the big, you know, all this high-tech internet stuff, they're all great Python fans. And there's an operating system, I think, called Python, which is, you know, it's all based on things we've done. And also, I mean, there are other moments like the fact that the Beatles, like Paul McCartney and certainly George Harrison, loved what we did so much. George put $5 million of his own money into the life of Brian. Those sort of things just leave me quite bewildered. And of course, the main thing of all, which I can't actually get to grips with at all, is that Elvis Presley used to watch Monty Python.
That's amazing.
Elvis Presley. You know, now you're impressed.
That's impressive.
Now you're impressed. We never met him, but apparently he loved Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Can you imagine that? That's just oh, come along, come along. These things are coming.
I was trying to imagine him doing the cheese.
Yes, it'd be lovely to do it.
It's a wonderful film.
Yeah, I might. He sort of said it would look sexier than John, but maybe that's not what he wants in Cheese Shop. Oh, my good man. I just come over from the library to read some author. I came over all this orient. You what? Oh, tasty. Anyway, sorry, shut up. Go on. There's a fantasy.
Are there
Someone there.
Somebody just there waving in the centre.
Hello, I was going to ask about the Gumbies, where they originally came from, and were you tempted to put more of them in the show, apart from the flower arranging?
The Gumbies originated, I mean, I think I called them Gumby, but the first Gumby was John, actually, when we were out filming, and we did lots of sort of quick talking heads, and John had to talking heads saying, I don't know anything about anything or something like that, and they just got him a costume and got a knotted handkerchief, and Hazel Pethig, our brilliant costume designer who's worked with us right from the very first Python shows down to the O2, she put all this gear together and rolled up his trousers, made him look like someone on the beach and all that, and John stood in the middle of a stream somewhere. He said, I don't know anything about anything. And then it sort of grew from that. There weren't many sort of stock characters in Python, but the Gumbies appeared regularly. No, I think there was probably quite enough of them in the show. And flower arranging was something which we'd always done in the live shows. I used to do it, and I used to love doing it, but I did it with such a bellow and such force that I lost my voice for the rest of the shows. So I wasn't allowed to do it this time. And Terry did it. Your dad did it.
Yeah.
And he was so worried about it. So I can't do this, you know. Mike does it so well and all that. And he was just terrific by the end, wasn't he? Really, every night you could see him growing in confidence about this. By the end, it was difficult to get him off, you know. It was like King Lear was slightly shorter than Flowers by the end.
But in the first draft of the script, do you remember when we did the first rehearsal, Gumby brain surgery?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But that got cut quite quickly.
That's actually very good point. Now, we did rehearse Gumby brain surgeon, you know. My brain hurts.
With the two Terrys and John.
Yeah.
And Carol, but that got cut.
Was there a lot that got cut from the original plan? Did it change a lot from when you first decided to do it to when it came to the stage?
Not a lot, no. I mean, Gumby was a good...
Gumby got cut. Custard Custard Pie.
Custard Pie, which is a lot of slapstick sketch.
Yeah.
I mean, the way it was done was Eric really just said to everybody, well, what are your favourites? What would you really like to do? And I think everyone sent in a list, and we more or less agreed on the list, but yeah, the Gumby brain surgery didn't work, and Custard Pie didn't work.
Yeah.
Those are the two main things.
And then there would have been a few more Gumby elements, because the guys shot green screen, just as Gumby's green screen stuff that was going to be used in the interval. So when everyone left to get drinks at half-time, up on the big screens, they were going to have Gumby messages from the Gumbies and messages from the Pepper Pots. But that didn't make it in either.
Yeah, what's happened to that?
It's in DVD extras.
Oh, the DVD extras, so there are more Gumby. Yeah, there are more Gumby.
There was a great scene in the doc that we showed how that was all put together, but it ended up hitting the cutting room floor too, but it was lovely.
It's all there.
Do you have any other favourite bits of footage that you couldn't include in the film?
There was a great shot of Eric walking down a corridor, singing "For He Is an Englishman," dressed in his tuxedo, and then we cut straight into Mike and Terry G talking about how they didn't have a voice like Eric's. There was a really nice sort of just very sort of intimate, sort of off the cuff scene, and there were some bits of banter that we really loved because it was really revealing. I mean, what was really nice shooting the doc was that the humour that was coming out was very Python-esque, and it was very spontaneous. So it felt really, like a great privilege that we felt that we were actually kind of involved in something that was creating or channeling Python.
Yeah.
And there are lots of bits of banter that ended up sort of on the cutting room floor that we kind of slightly missed. But we're happy with the final.
What I liked was it's reflective. Everyone was reflective at a certain point. It wasn't all, boom, they're doing this show, hey, great. So you have this fantastic opening, boom, and then people really kind of worried about what they were wearing on them when or something. They were wandering off about something. It did look like a, 6 old blokes from a care home, sort of give them a chance to get on stage.
Yeah, I liked actually the two. I did an interview with you in the car and with Terry G on the boat, and both of those were really really great things to shoot because they were really reflective and they were really great. And they're both in the film, but in that classic way, like a 2-hour interview became 45 seconds. Yeah. And there were nice bits. I mean, but Simon and David have an idea of what they miss. Do you guys miss anything?
Yes.
I think we probably have time for one final question from the audience. Oh, there's somebody there. I'm sorry, the lights are on me.
First of all, I'm really excited about the clangers coming out very shortly. But also, there are many hours worth of Python, much of which is very enjoyable. But I just wondered, alongside the things that you have clearly felt were hits that got included in the show, are there any sketches where you feel that Python sort of missed the mark, where the quality control wasn't quite as good? In other words, kind of what would be your least favourite Pythons?
Oh, it's really difficult because your least favourite you probably just sort of excise from your memory in some way, your censor. I mean, there was quite a lot, I thought, that didn't always work.
A couple of years ago, I watched all 45 episodes pretty much back to back. Given that there are 25 hours or 24 and a half hours worth, I did take a nap in between, I must confess.
Yeah, well, you know more than I do. Sorry, a long time since I've watched 45 hours, but I don't know. I mean, I really can't think of absolutely of things that just didn't work at all. But and the interesting thing is actually, with time, some things I didn't think were very funny, I go back to and think, actually, that was quite silly. And I'm sorry to be vague because I can't remember the exact.
Not a problem at all.
Back this up with actual.
My favourite is one of it's
yes,
a fish slapping sketch. That's my absolute favourite.
Your what?
The fish slapping sketch.
Oh yeah.
That's my absolute favourite.
Yeah.
There we are.
Yeah.
Very much.
Oh, there you go.
Who wrote that one, Mike?
What?
Who wrote that one?
Well, I don't think it was ever written. It was just sort of happened. Just kind of happened. We were doing this.
But how did that? Did someone just show up one day and go, "Look at the size of this fish"?
Well, yes, that happened. In most script meetings, someone would bring in a fish. That was odd. Now, what was remarkable was it was one of these Euro shows. It wasn't ever in the Python show. It was a Euro comedy show. You know, one of these dreadful things, sort of Euro fun, and all the various countries of Europe had to contribute a little bit of comedy folk material.
So it was like Eurovision, but for comedy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I realised that was where that came
No,
from.
well, there it was. That was where it was never repeated. It was just 1 year. And so we did a number of different things. And we had to just go out and do it. And we weren't really particularly into it. But we felt we ought to. The BBC said you ought to, because it'll help your profile in Europe and all that sort of thing. So we had some maypoles with people getting strangled and all that. And then the fish slapping dance, it must have been written a couple of days before, because someone had to book the fish, you know, and get the cosy and all that. But the actual, and the music and all that, I think that was actually just arrived on the day, and John and I kind of worked around what we had and with the costumes. So it was fairly spontaneous.
Oh wow! Well, that's.
But I'll tell you, the one thing about fish slapping was that when we rehearsed it, when we were at Teddington Lock, and we rehearsed it, and I was knocked into the water at the end, and I thought, it's just you're just falling into the water. And then when it came to shoot it, the lock had emptied without you really knowing. And suddenly everyone said, "Action, Mike, doodly 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 doo." And I had to say, either take the decision then to say, look, it's 15 feet into that water, or just go on with it. I just went ahead with it, and fell into the water. I was very proud of my fall. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Is that fall. If you look at it, it's really good. So
I've always thought that water looked disgusting as well. Like, it's really brown and gross.
You know, that's why they removed quite a lot of it. 15 foot of it. But no, I hit it, and everyone thought it was great. And I could hear my boots filled with water, and I could hear people above saying, "Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, yeah, great," and all that. "Oh, hey, we're down here, please."
I think that we've come to the end of the time that we've got, so... yeah, it's a real shame. But thank you so much for everyone for coming and...
Thank you.